And the practice is about the seeds and how to handle the seeds in you. The first practice is the bad seeds in you, like the seed of despair, the seed of jealousy, the seed of anger. Don't give them a chance. Let them sleep quietly down there, at the bottom of your consciousness. Do not give them, not give the negative seed a chance. Don't water them. Don't let the environment water them. So they have no chance to manifest. And they become naturally weaker and weaker. This is a very smart. Whatever you read, whatever you see, whatever you hear, may water the seed of despair, anger, violence in you. So choose an environment where you are protected. And choose companions and friends who know the practice. They will refrain from watering the seed of suffering, despair, anger in you. This is an art. We have to reorganize our life. We should create an environment where the bad seeds in us will not be watered every day. We don't water them and we don't let them water them. You know that our consciousness, as we have seen the other day, has so many layers, and the upper layers is a mind consciousness. Ý thức. And that this part down here is thought consciousness, tàng thức. Tàng thức. And all the seeds are here. Thought consciousness is made of all the seeds. And that is why it has the other name, the totality of the seeds. Nhất thiết chủng thức. Sattva Bijaka. Sattva means all, the totality. Bija means seeds. That is the name, the other name of star consciousness. Star consciousness maintain all the seeds, and star consciousness are the seeds themselves. The maintainer and the object of maintenance are the same. And there are negative seeds down here, and it's wise to let them sleep there. Don't give them a chance. So this is the first practice of diligence. Usually when we think of diligence, we think of intensive practice. We practice for 7 days or 21 days, very intensive, and then we relax, we don't practice anymore. That is not. And that is not diligence. Diligence is the continued practice of protecting oneself. And you should have a good environment. You should have a good sangha in order to maintain the practice. So building a sangha in order to be supported, to maintain your practice is a very crucial for success. Today I'd like to introduce to you another consciousness that lay in the middle. Its Sanskrit name is Manas. Matna. And I like to translate it by the word cogitation. Cogitation. Like in cogito ergo sum, cogitation, consciousness. This consciousness is sometimes called the lover. The lover. Tình thức. Because it has the tendency to stick to embrace the five skandhas as a self, as a separate self. Manas was born from a number of unwholesome seeds. Ignorance about self, complexes of inferiority, of superiority, of equality. All these are the foundation of manas. Sticking to store consciousness as a self, loving love consciousness as a self. Everything else is not self. We know that if we have the complex of inferiority, that is because of manas. If we have the complex of superiority, that is because of manas. And when we have the complex that I am equal to him, to her, that complex of equality is also manas. According to the Buddha, self is an illusion. The true nature of reality is no self. When you look at a flower, you see a flower is full of the cosmos. The sunshine, you see the sunshine in the flower, because we know that without sunshine, no flower can grow. We see a cloud in a flower. Without a cloud, there will be no rain and no flower can grow. The seed, the soil, the rain, everything, many things in the cosmos have come together and help this flower to manifestation only. And this flower is full of the cosmos. Everything is in it, including your consciousness is in it. Because this is the object of your perception. And perception is always perception of something. To perceive means to perceive something. There cannot be the perceiver without the object of perception. The perceiver and the perceived, they manifest at the same time. Like when we say eating. Eating is always eating something. There cannot be an eater without something that is being eaten. So consciousness is always consciousness of something. If you are a phenomenologist, you are used to that kind of expression. So this flower is full of the cosmos. It contains the whole cosmos. I am large, I contain the multitude. That's what the flower is saying. But in the teaching of the Buddha, sometimes we say that this flower is empty, which is the opposite of the truth. Because the flower is full of everything in the cosmos. But why the Bodhisattva Avalokita say that everything is empty? And we want to ask the Bodhisattva, Mr. Bodhisattva, you say that the flower is empty. I think that it is full. Empty of what? To be full of the cosmos. But empty of what? And the Bodhisattva will smile and said, it is of course full of the cosmos, but it is empty of a separate existence, of a separate self. A flower is made only of non-flower elements. And you can list all the non-flower elements. Without these non-flower elements, the flower cannot be there. The flower cannot be by itself alone without non-flower elements. So the flower is full with cosmos, but empty of a separate existence. And so to be full of cosmos and to be empty of a separate self are just the same thing. To be full means to be empty. You don't have a separate self. How a flower could exist without the non-flower elements? So the nature of the flower is empty. Because of emptiness, a flower is possible. That is a very famous declaration made by Nagarjuna. Thanks to emptiness, everything is possible. But manas ignore that. Manas believe that there is a self. And that is why we can say that manas is born from the delusion, represented by a number of unwholesome seeds down there. You suffer because you believe that you have a self. If you know that you are in him, he is in you, and then you say that I am you and you are me, and you don't have to compare. And if you don't compare, you don't have any complex of inferiority. You don't have any complex of superiority. And you don't have even the complex of equality. Because you don't compare, because you are it. You are him, you are her, you are the cosmos. Everything inter-is. The flower is a flower, but it is also the sunshine. The flower is the flower, but she is also the cloud. The flower is a flower, but she is also the soil. So everything inter-is, and that is the truth of interbeing. To be means to interbe. And the true meaning of to be is to interbe. But in the dictionary, you have not found the word interbe, which is which is a very important word. Inter-being. You cannot be by yourself. A flower cannot be by herself alone. She has to interbe with the cosmos. My friend, you cannot be by yourself alone. You have to interbe with all of us, with the cosmos. And manas ignore that. And that is why you have to handle manas. Manas is always seeking pleasure, day and night. The tendency of seeking pleasure is in manas. And manas ignore the danger of pleasure seeking. And that is why we need meditation effectuated by mind consciousness in order to brighten the seeds of wisdom down here, in order to correct manas, to transform manas. There is a wisdom called the wisdom of non-discrimination. Those of us who have meditated well enough, we have that wisdom. It's like my two hands. They don't practice, but they have the wisdom of non-discrimination. Nirvikalpa jnana. My right hand wrote most of the poems. I wrote all my poems with my right hand, except one. That day I did not have a pen. So there was a typewriter of someone. So I put an old envelope into it, and that is the only time I wrote a poem. I write a poem with two hands. And my hand can do things like inviting the bell, doing calligraphy and so on. But my right hand is not victim of any complex. And she doesn't have the complex of superiority over my left hand. My right hand never say, you left hand, you are good for nothing. I do everything by myself, you are lazy, you are not useful, and so on. And it's wonderful to look at my left hand. She does not suffer at all. She does not have the complex of inferiority. That is why she is perfectly happy. So the wisdom of non-discrimination is a reality and not just a wishful thinking subject. One day I was trying to hang a picture on the wall, and my left hand was holding a nail, my right hand a hammer. And I was not very mindful that day. So instead of pounding on the nail, I pound on this finger. It's so painful. Right away, my right hand put the hammer down and took my left hand with a lot of compassion and care, and took good care of that, like it took care of itself. It never say, you left hand, I am doing you a favor. You have to remember that. And my left hand did not blame, did not say, you right hand, you have done injustice to me. I want justice. Give me that hammer. No, that is not the thinking of my left hand, because my left hand is full of wisdom of non-discrimination. So The harmony between the two hands are perfect. And they don't think of each other in terms of superiority, inferiority, and even equality, because I am you and you are I. We belong to the same reality. And manas ignore that. Manas is always seeking pleasure. Manas ignore the danger of pleasure seeking. So you have to tell Manas. Manas is always trying to run away from suffering, painful feeling. Manas ignore the goodness of suffering. Suffering is good sometimes. You can learn a lot from suffering. And Manas just try to run away from suffering. And she ignore the goodness of suffering. If you have learned to be compassionate, to be understanding because you have suffered, we need a dose of suffering in order to grow. People who have not suffered, they have no chance in order to cultivate their understanding, their compassion. And it's not good to send our children to a place where there is no suffering. There, they have no chance to learn, to understand, and to love. But the kingdom of God is not a place where there is no suffering. Because if so, people don't know what is understanding and compassion. And that is not the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is a place where there is great understanding and great compassion. And in order to have these things, you have to learn, you have to cultivate. And without the suffering, how can you cultivate compassion and understanding? It's like the mud. Without the mud, you cannot grow lotus. In Plum Village, if you go, you come and visit us in summer, you see lotus ponds, and you see that lotus always grow on mud. No mud, no lotus. So no suffering, no compassion, no understanding. So my definition of the kingdom of God is a place where there is great understanding, great compassion. And therefore, there must be suffering. There must be the mud in order the lotus to grow. And we should not be afraid of suffering, because if we practice, we can learn a lot of suffering. We grow up just because we have suffered. Every one of us needs a dose of suffering in order to grow. That is inter-being. Without the mud, there is no lotus. And lotus and mud, they inter-are. Suffering and compassion, they inter-are also. So when your wisdom of non-discrimination grows, and then manas become very thin and thin and thin. And the wisdom of non-discrimination, the wisdom of sameness, we replace manas when we get enlightened, we get transformed. So going back to the 4 practices of true diligence, we know that the first practice is let us not give the negative seeds a chance down here. Because if we give the negative seeds a chance, they will manifest on the level of mind consciousness, they will strengthen manas. And each of us should write down the kind of practice we need in order to make sure that this is our daily practice. When we think, our thinking might water the negative seeds. So the practice of right thinking will avoid us, will help us not to water the bad seeds in us. When we read a newspaper, when we read a book, what we read in the book and newspaper can water the negative seeds. So our practice of mindful consumption is also the practice of self-protection and the protection of our beloved one. The second practice of True Diligence is when it happens that a negative seed manifests up there, try to help that seed to go back to its original place as quickly as possible. Help return the mental formation, the negative mental formation to its original place. It means at the bottom of store consciousness. Suppose the seed of despair come up here. When it is down there, it is called a seed, bija. When it is up here, it is a mental formation, a citta samskara. And if we allow this mental formation to stay too long in the level of mind consciousness, it will cause damage. Store consciousness is like the basement of our house, and mind consciousness is like the living room. And when one negative seed manifests, the second practice is to help that go back as soon as possible. And the Buddha proposed the practice of changing back. Changing back. Pack is a piece of wood that link the two blocks of wood together. The carpenter used a pack in order to keep the two blocks of wood together. But if the pack is not a good one, you can change the pack. You can take a good, solid, new pack. You put at the right place, and with a hammer, you drive the pack into it, and you take out the old pack. So if a mental formation manifests and is causing damage to you, and then you should practice mindful breathing in order to invite another mental formation to come up to replace this one. Changing back. It's the way we change our CD. If the CD of music does not please you, and then why do you have to listen? You push a button, you stop, and you change the CD. So in our time, we should use the practice of changing CD instead of changing pack. changing channel. Now with a telecommand, you can change the channels very quickly. And practitioners should be able to change their mental formation as quickly as they change the channels of their televisions. When we come to a retreat like this, we have a lot of chance that our good seeds are watered every day. When I see a brother, a sister walking mindfully, freely, relaxingly with joy, that image water the seed of happiness, of peace, of mindfulness in us. So creating an environment where the good seeds in you can be watered every day is extremely important. Think of your children. Their school now is not very safe, are not very safe. And where they go in order to entertain themselves are not very safe places. So the practice consists of two aspects. The first of all, create a kind of environment where the bad seeds are not watered for us and for our children. The second aspect is, if it happened that a bad seed is water, we can manage to change it quickly. Go back to your breathing. Recognize that this CD is not what you would like to listen, and you change another CD that you like. So listen to a Dharma talk, practicing a chant, thinking of doing something to help the people who are in difficulties. All these things are already there. You only need to pick up one of these wonderful things and you change the mental formation that is in you. When you have a depression, it is possible to change your depression. Although it is more difficult because depression is the outcome of a process of consumption. The Buddha said, nothing can survive without food. Your love cannot survive if you don't feed your love. Your hate, your despair also. If you don't feed them, they will die. Your depression also. You have been feeding your depression by the way you live, by the way you consume. You must have consumed, you must have lived in such a way that make the depression possible today. So look deeply into your depression and identify the source of food, the source of nutriment you have used to nourish them, and just cut off that source of nutriments. And in a week or two, your depression will die. The Buddha said this, what has come to be, namely your suffering, your depression, what has come to be, if you look deeply into it, and if you can discover the source of nutriment that has been used to nourish it, and then you are already on the path of emancipation. So the second noble truth is conceived in terms of food, in terms of nutriment. You have used that food, you have used that nutriment to nourish your suffering, your fear, your depression. And therefore, mindful breathing, focusing on the nature of your depression, and you identify the way of life, the way of consumption that you have followed in the last 6 months, and you know where the depression has come. You have listened to them, you have paid attention to them too much, you have allowed these negative things to come and water the negative seed in you, and that is why the depression has become a reality. And that is why, in order to protect yourself, not to allow things like despair and depression to come, in every moment we need to be aware of what is going on in terms of feelings and perceptions and emotions. If it is an unwholesome thing, and then we should right away change the pack, change the CD. And you have many CDs in reserve in order to use, in order to change the CD that is playing just now. And you can help the other person. The other person may be caught in a feeling, in a perception, in a thinking that is not healthy for him or for her. You say, a penny for your thought, a penny for your feelings. You know what is going on. You want to know what is going on with your beloved one. And she will tell you. And you, with some skillfulness, you bring him, you bring her out of that situation very quickly. You tell him a story, you remind him of something wholesome, happy, and then you help change his CD. You help change her CD. That can be done quickly. You practice for yourself, and you help the other person change the emotion, the feelings, the perceptions they are having, so that they can get out easily. If you let him or her caught in that for a long time, that will do damage to him or to her. So inquire about him, inquire about her, inquire about the mental formation that is dominating that person, and try to help him out of that. And you can be helped by your co-practitioners also. Your co-practitioners may be your partner, your daughter, your son, your husband, your wife. So we practice together and we support each other in the practice. So when a negative seed manifests itself in mind consciousness, our mindfulness should be invited up to recognize them as unwholesome. We don't need to fight to suppress. We need only to change the CD, non-violence. And you are very skillful practitioner if you can change your CD, your mental formation quickly. CD, mental formation. Change your MF. And then now we go to the third practice of true diligence. Give the positive seeds a chance. You know that you have the seed of faith, the seed of joy, the seed of compassion, the seed of forgiveness. They are very wholesome. And if they manifest in you, you are a happy person. And you can make people around you happy. And that is why focus your attention on these wholesome, positive seeds. And do something to touch them, to water them. And this is an art also. We need to practice watering the good seeds in us. We need to practice helping to water the wholesome seed in the other person. And that is the third practice of true diligence. Every day. If an opportunity presents itself to water the good seed in you, do it. If an opportunity presents itself to water the good seed in him or in her, do it right away. That is the practice of happiness. When the seed of compassion, of forgiveness, of joy manifests as a mental formation, you are happy. You make people around you happy. And you know that you have these seeds in you. You have a stock of reserve of happiness in you. And you may have covered them up with many layers of worries and fear and anger, but are still there. So try to break through to them, touch them, and have them manifest, give them a chance. That is the third aspect of the practice of true diligence. And this is what the Buddha recommends us. He's so compassionate. And the fourth practice of true diligence is any wholesome mental formation that has manifested, keep it as long as possible on the level of your mind consciousness. It's like a very dear friend of yours, just come and visit you and bring you a lot of joy. Why don't keep him? Why don't keep her with you for a few more days? So if a wholesome mental formation is touched, is water, and manifests itself as the energy of joy, of peace, of happiness, why replace them? Let them be there and ask them to stay as long as possible. In the Gospel, it is said, que la joie demeure, or may the joy continue, remain. That is the practice of true diligence. If you find the retreat pleasant, that walking meditation bring you relaxation, touching the wonders of life, and you are determined to continue, because it continues to nourish you, to transform you, continue to nourish you and transform your beloved one. So the wholesome thing, when they manifest, we try to keep them, to maintain them alive. And when they are alive up here, they will strengthen at the base, strengthening at the base. If the negative seed manifests up here, and if you allow them to stay too long here, and then at the base they will be strengthened. So it's very wise of you to help it to go back as soon as possible. The same thing is true with the wholesome seed. If a wholesome seed is water and manifests up here, and then if you can maintain it as long as possible, that is the time for the seed to grow strong down there. And that is Buddhist psychology, deep psychology. And this holy, that can be entirely applied to our daily life. The four practice of true diligence. Tomorrow we shall have a session of questions and answers, and you are invited to ask your questions. And the best questions are the questions that have to do with our suffering, our happiness, our practice, our difficulties also. And we know that a good question can benefit so many people.